was so unhappy and it was not working, and my mental health was like seriously being affected. My kids were being affected because I wasn't at home. You were being affected because I wasn't at home. And when I was at home, I was burnt out and exhausted. And it just wasn't working for our family anymore. And so, having previously been.
So we got the cake, and then it wouldn't sit on the seat because it will tilt. And you couldn't really put it in the trunk because you can't really see it. So I had to
How
put it
stressed were you during that drive?
very, very stressed. Food arrived very late towards the end when people had already eaten, which
Yeah, it was like 11 o'clock. They were in the same city as us, and we were not in a big city. And they're like, oh, we hit traffic. I'm like, for 3 hours for a drive that takes 15 minutes at rush hour. It was insane, but that wasn't your fault.
I think it was like 9:30, and I looked at my phone. There's a bunch of messages from you, like what's going on. And I was like, oh, we're.
But I was stressed for like 9 months that there wouldn't be enough food. And then we had.
Hello, my name is Moin,
My name's Max.
and welcome to the Blended Podcast.
Welcome.
So, what are we talking about today?
Why don't we start with our week? How was your week?
My week's last episode we filmed last week on Wednesday to Thursday.
How'd I do with that? That was my first filming.
Yeah, I think you did pretty well. It was good.
You're so kind.
Well, you actually did a good job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was not expecting to do a very good job.
Yeah, and we'll only get better from here.
Yes, promise.
My last week, I don't know, nothing crazy happened. Just, what did we do? It was just Thursday, Friday. We had both girls at home.
Mm-hmm.
Did we do anything on the weekend? I don't think so.
Why can I never remember what we do on the weekend?
I don't know. Why can't we remember what we do on the weekend?
What did we do?
It was very hot.
You played pickleball with the kids?
Was it on the weekend?
Yes. That was Saturday, wasn't it?
It was probably Friday.
Anyways, at some point you played pickleball.
Yes, Friday I played pickleball with the kids. And funny story about that. We were playing, I think we were out in the park since 7 p.m. And then my friends came, we started playing pickleball, and the kids were there. I think it was like 9:30. And I looked at my phone. There's a bunch of messages from you, like what's going on. And we're like, oh, we're playing pickleball. And then I was like, where are you? And she's like, I'm here. And then
in my pajamas.
In her pajamas.
On a very full pickleball court.
And showed up at the pickleball court because. Why did you show up?
I don't know. I started panicking. You're never out till 9:30 with the kids.
That's true.
At the park, and then I couldn't get a hold of you, and I don't know, I'm paranoid, and so I was like, I'm just gonna go make sure they're alive and well.
Yes.
I started catastrophizing. I'm like, oh my god, what if one of the kids wandered off and he's looking for them and doesn't want to panic me? And that's just where my head goes. So I came to check.
You know, we did communicate at like around an hour
and a half
before, around 8ish, that I'm playing pickleball with the kids. And yeah, that was that.
I'm just a little cray-cray, that's all.
Yeah. Or you're just, or you love us too much.
Yeah, we'll go with that one.
Yeah. So yeah, I played pickleball. I guess that was a highlight. And for those of you who don't know what pickleball is, it's like a mini version of tennis. Very popular in the States. Yeah. And for some reason, people like to, I don't know, hate on pickleball. Like, oh, it's an old person sport, blah, blah. And usually it's people who haven't really played pickleball.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this is turning into a rant about pickleball. But that's what we did on Saturday. Sunday, I think we went to the park again.
Yes, we did.
For a little bit.
It was so hot out.
It was very hot out.
The mosquitoes were out, so that was...
There was mosquitoes. We took our hammock chairs that you got from Costco.
Those things are amazing, though.
They're very comfy.
Costco in general is amazing. You hate Costco, but I love it.
Yes, I don't like going grocery shopping that much.
I just also, just on the Costco topic, I just feel like everyone who has no sense of like what is happening around them, or like that there are other people near them, all tend to go to Costco. So it is to be fair a shit show trying to navigate through Costco with a bunch of inept people, but
It's a big,
it's a
big
good deal.
store. It's a big store, and people get distracted.
That's true. We'll go with that.
Yes, especially if there's people with ADHD around there. Um, yeah, so the hammock chairs were. I had one of our neighbors came down and they're like, "Oh, what the heck is that?" And inspected it in full. And so yeah, hammock chairs are a hit. And so that was our basically weekend. And then obviously the regular stuff, cooking and
Prepping for the week ahead.
laundry and dishes and all that stuff that comes with
I felt like
that.
the kids were pretty on point this weekend. Not a whole lot of like meltdowns or difficulties there. Um, it's always good when the kids are together. I find that they are better regulated when they're together than when it's a weekend where it's just one of the kids. Um, and also like trying to manage how much screen time they're getting, I find is a huge correlation with like behaviors overall and how well that goes.
Right.
But you're always the one on top of that. I tend to be more lax.
Right, true. Kids were good. Kids staying home. So we have two kids. One of them finished school early because she goes to a private school, and the other one didn't. So one of them was home, and
Had some pink eye. That was good times.
I don't know. Do we need to?
What's life with kids? I mean,
Right. Yes,
we're
she
raw and
had. She
unfiltered over
had.
here.
She had pink eye or conjunctivitis, and we were treating that. Very distracting, I guess, for a lot of people with kids. Their summer's coming up, and they're not going to summer camp, which we decided they're not going, and we're
Yeah, that's a
gonna.
first for us too. To like historically, they've always been in summer camp.
Yeah. And I've been working, but very distracting, especially if they come in every 10, 15 minutes to ask for stuff. Um,
I tend to work at the kitchen table when they're home, and so it is tough when they're like interrupting and stuff. But I feel like if you're away, it drives Amanisha to want to come see you because you're not physically in the space.
right. Um, yeah, I guess so. But it'll be an adjustment for the summer.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been busy. Like with onboarding, I've been onboarding a whole bunch of new clients for the business. Um, and so that means I'm on site, like in and out of the house multiple times a day. So hopefully, my hope is once that like onboarding process is done for like the newest chunk, I'll be able to be more hands on with the kids over the summer, like activities, going to library, swimming, stuff like that, rather than them just kind of hanging around in the house while we're trying to work or I'm running in and out. So that'll be an improvement as well.
Yeah. So Max runs a cleaning business,
Yeah, residential cleaning company.
residential cleaning company, and I'm in real estate. Um, so yeah, you've done a really good job with the
Thank you.
starting the business and where it's at in such a short period of time.
Yeah, like when I think about the fact that it's like not even close to a year yet, because I started, what really started in November.
Right.
Um, and I've got like almost two entire crews up and running full time. That's pretty cool.
Yes. Good job, babes.
High five.
High five.
That's been mostly like you've been so supportive. Like I've had a meltdown every day for a lot of it. So thank you.
You're welcome. It helps when you have experience in the entrepreneurial lifestyle,
Yes.
so I know what comes with it.
It's
So
tough.
I was prepared.
It's tough, man. Like you have to just be willing to be very uncomfortable and like not know what the next step might be for most of the time. So there's a lot of benefits. Like our schedules are completely our own. Like the biggest driving factor, I'll just back up here a bit, for me to leave. Like I was in a very secure corporate design job prior to leaving, and I like was so unhappy, and it was not working, and my mental health was like seriously being affected. My kids were being affected because I wasn't at home. You were being affected because I wasn't at home, and when I was at home, I was burnt out and exhausted, and it just wasn't working for our family anymore. And so having previously been a pretty risk averse person, just blindly taking a leap of faith to leave the company and start my own business was terrifying, but it's been well worth it, I would say. Like the family unit in and of itself is doing a lot better now that I can be home so much more of the time. And when I am home, I'm present and I'm here. But it's not without its hiccups being in like an entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah, I would definitely say that your mental health improved quite a lot, and yeah, you've been more present at home. Your schedule is your own, and you were a lot happier doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning. And then obviously, with any business, you hit like there's I guess there's a honeymoon phase, and then there comes a phase where you just need to push through, which you did. There was a tough period
I think it
in
was
the
when it
middle.
was like because I started the company cleaning myself in order to get the ball rolling and get kind of out there with as little overhead as possible. I was cleaning, and then as soon as it got to the breaking point of like, okay, I can no longer keep up by myself and I'm ready to like bring on staff, that is when things got really, really challenging and setbacks were happening and you're hitting the same wall over and over again for a while. It's really hard to keep pushing through and to not like doubt all of the decisions you've made up until that point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, but definitely a good decision for the family overall, and you're doing quite well. And so, let's get to the main part of our
right.
podcast today. We've diverted. So, we're talking about getting married and planning the wedding and sort of blending both our cultures into the wedding. And so, we can start with what you thought was going to happen when you're planning the wedding and your expectations from me, and then um, what I thought I would be doing. So I can go first and relay my experience, and
Yes,
then
let's
you
do
can
that.
go. Okay. So I come from Pakistan, and we have like 3 or 4 or 5 days of weddings, and usually um, your your family plans the wedding events for you. You have very little to do with it. We don't really have best men or
Like
grooms,
bridal parties.
bridal parties or whatnot. So it's a very Western concept. So it was new for me. And so when we started talking about getting married, um, you were very excited and you said you will do all of it, and I had to do very little, which was I was used to. And then as things started progressing and start building up, and you realize how much you had to do,
It was like a full time job.
it's a full
It
time
was like
job.
a small, we chose to have like a small, intimate wedding um, for several reasons. But like, if we had it in my parents' backyard and like the logistics of planning that kind of event, it was a full time job. Plus, I was still working my corporate job at the time and we had 2 kids. It was a lot.
It's a lot of work, and so for me, um, I had to first pick, I guess, best man or groomsman, and so that was a new concept for me. And it was like who's being left out, and you had less people in your
Mm.
bridal party, and so we had to make it even. So I had to cut a few people out,
Sorry,
and
y'all.
so I had to go through that. But I don't think it ended up being that much of a big deal. The people closest to me were there, and yeah, you planned the wedding beautifully. I was in charge, ended up being in charge of porta potties at the end,
And catering for like the Pakistani
and
portion of
catering
food.
for the for my portion of the food, which arrived late, which is another story. And I picked up the cake,
Yes,
which nobody ended up eating.
I'm so
Um,
mad. I really wanted to eat that cake.
um, yeah, so yeah, you start, I guess. Or for me, my suit, I didn't really have to plan that much in advance. I think it was 2 or 3 months before I went with my best man to go pick a suit, and um, it was well designed. We picked the color. It was a fall wedding and outdoors in the backyard.
It was beautiful though. Like the wedding honestly turned out like
Yeah, the weather was
perfect.
great, and yeah, everything turned out very, very well. And that's mostly because you planned it really, really well. And obviously, the people that were there made it a success as well.
Like the vendors were phenomenal. Like we should honestly like link our vendors. If you're in Ontario, they're amazing.
Yes, they were very good, and I guess the photographer
Yeah,
was
and
really good.
so we did a photo booth, and she ended up being our photographer as well. She was phenomenal. Everyone loved the photo booth, especially the kids. We had
Yep.
like a food truck, but it was a bar called the Sway Bar, and they were also outstanding. The tent people were outstanding. Our caterers, or they're called Gilt, Gilt. The food was like outstanding. The catering staff also had another service called Day of Coordinator. Highly, highly recommend going with the Day of Coordinator if you have the opportunity, but you're not going for the full like wedding planning service. Like once it's the day of, you're gonna need somebody who can kind of run things in the background, and they were phenomenal. Like I did a lot of planning, but our vendors were each like outstanding in their own right to make that day go off without a hitch.
Yes. So, you wanna talk about how planning was for you and how you decided to blend in things from my
Yeah, let's start
cultural
with that.
background and what that was like, and
So there's like a
yeah, all that
component
stuff.
involved of like,
Keep talking.
are
Just gonna
we
check some.
do we want to do two weddings, a Western wedding and a traditional like Pakistani wedding? We kind of want to blend the two into one ceremony and day. I think because things with your family were a bit difficult or tenuous at the time, we decided that likely there wouldn't be a traditional wedding. So the best course of action would be to kind of blend values from both into one day. And so I remember asking you, like, okay, from all of your traditions and in the weddings you've been to and attended, what is important to you? And like the two things you mentioned off the hop were the tikka, which I wore a beautiful tikka at the wedding. It was stunning.
Right.
And that we get mendi, which I also loved. So the bridal party, our two girls and myself all got mendi done at the house here before the wedding.
Mendi is henna,
Yes, thank you.
and then tikka is a piece of
Like the jewelry
that goes on
here.
Yeah.
The mendi I think was like by far one of my favorite things we did at the wedding.
Yeah, goes on your tikka is something that goes on your forehead. For
It's a
those
piece
of
of
you,
jewelry. Yeah.
they're not watching.
We can like link a picture at some point so like you can see them. Or I don't know if that's possible, but anyways, we did that, and then we also did something really cool that's traditional in Pakistan, where the bridesmaids and groomsmen do choreographed dances. So at the reception, those dances were done. One, I'm not a very good dancer, and two, being in front of crowds in like a speech capacity or particularly a dancing capacity is not my comfort zone. So I had a very small moment in that, which I stressed about for the entire period leading up to the wedding. But it was outstanding. Like all the groomsmen did so much work to make it happen, and it was fantastic. Everyone from my family absolutely died. They loved it so much, and it was something
Yep.
that none of them had ever seen before. So I think that was like people talked about that part for weeks after the wedding. Like I think it really was like a favorite for everybody at the wedding. It was outstanding. I blacked out during my 10-second interval because I was so nervous, but it was really, really great seeing. So I was there anything else? And then the food we had Guilt Catering, who did more. It was like a big grazing table, which was really cool. And then we also ordered like biryani and stuff like that. That you coordinated, and they ended up being super late, which was really annoying. And then I also had samosas and pakoras set out during like cocktail hour, um, so that we could blend like the traditional foods and the like North American foods. I just felt like it was important for us both to feel that sense of like tradition in that day, um, and it be something that was meaningful for both of us. The planning was insane though.
Yeah. So you can talk about planning a bit more, and then so I had most of my friends attend the wedding, and you had friends and family. My most of my family wasn't there except for my younger brother, and we'll talk about that I guess in another episode because
Yeah.
that's a whole other topic to cover. But we will cover that. Um, so how did you feel supported in your planning and yeah, how did you manage all the planning? Because you did most of it yourself, and then um, I guess you started asking or requesting for more support, and then we had a couple of dialogues about it because initially um, you were supposed to be planning, and then I wasn't as much, and then you had all these thoughts about, oh, you're not invested, or like all these thoughts start to creep in, which um, again, I guess we had conversations around it.
Yeah.
So anyway, you're more of a planner. I'm more laid back.
Also, though, like, I think that sometimes I truly lose sight of like the cultural differences in what we would have grown up in and how that would come into play in areas in our lives that you don't necessarily expect them to. So when, like, for example, the wedding planning is like, yes, I was one going into it had no concept of like the sheer volume of like work and coordination and then budgeting that layered on top of it. And like I had a binder that I was constantly updating and like the amount of details involved, and it was a lot to keep track of and to do and to plan independently because it was just me doing it. And so I didn't need too much from you, but I did feel like when things came up that like I wanted your opinion or I like wanted to delegate a task to you or stuff like that, like there you weren't overly engaged in that. And like a lot of that would likely have to do with the fact that like none of the wedding planning stuff would have ever been on your radar in your life. Um but it was frustrating, and like to be fair, like when I get frustrated or overwhelmed, I'm not the most reasonable person in the world. But I definitely feel like we had some pretty big disagreements of me being like, I am doing all of this by myself. I need your support. And I feel like even when I do get some of your support, you're not completely engaged in it. And that was a challenge.
Yeah, so it was a mix of, I guess, me stepping up a little bit, and then you also understanding where I'm coming from, and I guess we sort of made it work.
Yeah, we got there eventually. I think
Yeah, we
honestly,
got
it's
there.
good for a relationship to go through stuff like that because when there's also like an element of trust of like like you said, I'm a planner and I'm a control freak. I will willingly admit that. And so even delegating tasks completely was really difficult because there's like a massive element of trust that like you'll do it the way that I want it to be done, which isn't a fair expectation when you're delegating a task in the time frame that again I want it done. And like it felt justified to me at the time because I also knew all like so you're in charge of like porta potties, right? And that can seem relatively simple. But I also knew that when you schedule this, how you're scheduling it, the kind you're scheduling impacts 10 other vendors and their timing and how that all needs to fit together. Because it was a complex puzzle getting porta potties, tents, flooring, furniture, the bar, like cart, like all of those things in the right sequence to get them into the backyard, plus all the electrical planning. Like there were so many factors involved that like me delegating to you, okay, you just need to figure out porta potties. But that was actually like it fit into a bigger complex plan. And so it was really hard to like delegate a task and then trust you to do it in a way that works with everything else. But I wasn't communicating everything else, I don't think, super effectively.
Right. Anyway, the porta potties were a success.
Yes, everyone loved that. They were very fancy. Everyone loved the porta potties. That was another big point of conversation.
Really?
Yes, they
No,
were
I didn't
very
know
fancy porta potties.
that. And then the food, Pakistani food arrived very late towards the end when people had already eaten,
Yeah, it
which,
was like 11 o'clock. They were in the same city as us, and we were not in a big city. And they're like, "Oh, we hit traffic." I'm like, "For 3 hours for a drive that takes 15 minutes at rush hour, it was insane." But that wasn't your fault.
yeah, it wasn't my fault. They just weren't a good vendor. And then, oh, I had to drive the cake from,
Milton?
no, so so we're in Oakville, and Cambridge is about a 40-minute drive. And then I had to pick up the cake on the day of the wedding, and I had to take the kids with me as well. It was just Gigi or Gigi and
You
Amanisha. I
had both.
forget. I had both kids. So, and So we got the cake, and then it wouldn't sit on the seat because it will tilt, and you couldn't really put it in the trunk because you can't really see it. So I had to
How
put it
stressed were you during that drive?
very, very stressed, and so I had to put it on the like I put the passenger seat all the way back, and it was on the footrest is not footrest, where the floor of the car, and then just have it there in
With two
between
kids in the car.
the two kids in between the dashboard and the other seat, and make sure they're not touching. And so it was a very stressful 45-minute drive, and I had to drive very carefully and be on turns. But the cake made it,
It was beautiful too. It
and
was a beautiful
it was a
cake.
great cake. Um,
I'm still mad I didn't get to taste it though.
yeah, but I didn't eat it either. I don't think anybody ended up eating the
We had
cake
so
on
much
that
extra
day.
food. I was stressed for like 9 months that there wouldn't be enough food. And then we had so much food left over.
Yep.
Like an obscene amount of food left over.
Yep, there was definitely a lot of food. So wedding was a great success,
Mm-hmm.
and
It was a perfect day.
yeah, we had dances. There was bar, great food. We had good speeches, and yeah, we had an after party afterwards with our friends, and yeah, that was fun too.
Yeah.
And yeah, overall it was great. Um, so anyone who's getting married or planning a wedding, just know that there's a lot of things to
It will be a true
cover.
test of your relationship, honestly. I think like it's stressful planning a wedding, and there's a lot of opinions both within the relationship and outside of the relationship of what that means and should be done and shouldn't be done. And um, go into it as a team. Like I don't think at the beginning, I think we made a mistake by being like, okay, Max is going to plan the wedding, and that
Right.
was me who said that because I wanted to. But I think if we had gone in with better expectations and like a better idea of like, okay, this is a team event, not like one person, that would have probably worked a bit better. Um, Even if one person like heads the venture, I think how we went into that, the mindset and like the expectations probably should have been discussed a little bit more in detail going into it to avoid kind of like the frustration and resentment on both sides as those things came up further and further down the road.
Right. Yeah, lots of planning involved, especially if it's a Western style wedding. You have to order your dress a year in
Oh my
advance or
god, the
something,
dress. I forgot I
which I
blocked
find
out the dress event.
crazy. And I have to do my suit 2 months in advance.
Well, I bought 2 wedding dresses.
Oh, yes, you bought 2 wedding dresses, so you wanna.
So I ordered like in the proper time frame. I went to a bridal shop, ordered my dress. It shows up like I don't know a month before the wedding, so 4 weeks early, and it was ordered like 2, if not 3 sizes too big. So in order to have it altered, they would have had to essentially like reconstruct the entire dress. Um, and it would have cost like just as much as the dress had by that point, and I still didn't feel like I was going to be 100% happy with it.
Right.
So in a panic, I went to David's Bridal and ended up finding like a absolutely stunning dress. The staff there were fantastic, but at the end of the day, spent like even more on the second dress and had two, which I still have sitting in a closet upstairs, listed on Facebook Marketplace. So if anyone needs a wedding dress, I have two.
Yep.
But it was beautiful. I really loved my dress.
Yeah. And I like my suit as
It
well.
was really nice.
Yeah, I had my initials. What do you say?
Embroidered.
Embroidered on the inside, and then we had the wedding date on the
Oh
collar
yeah,
if
I
you lift
forgot
it up.
about that.
So that was really cool. It's my first custom suit. Um,
Do you have any other advice for like a couple getting ready to get married?
any other advice for a couple getting married? Depends. So if they're like different cultures and if families are involved, um, I would say, I guess, take into consideration both pieces of the culture and try to have a fusion like we did, which I thought was really, really good.
I really loved it.
Like all the bridesmaid had henna, we had food from
Antikas.
Antikas, and the girls had that, and then we had the choreographed dances, but we did the vows like Western style,
Hmm.
and the walking down the aisle.
And we also had a nikah separately. So, but it wasn't like a big formal event.
Right, but that's after,
Yes.
and then we'll talk about that when we talk about.
We also got married at
Right,
City Hall initially for like the legal piece of things.
right. We had a civil ceremony at
Yes.
City Hall a couple months prior,
Yeah.
right? And we just wanted to get the paperwork done before the actual wedding, so the event itself is just a celebration, and we don't have to do any paperwork or keep track of where everything is because we were also flying out to for our honeymoon,
Hmm.
and so it's easier for things to get lost. It was just easier that way for us.
Also, so that we could have our officiant, because they weren't like a legal officiant, so they
Right,
couldn't have us sign the paperwork themselves. Um, so we had to do that ahead of time.
right. The officiant was a family friend from your
Yes.
dad's side. So they weren't a legal officiant, so we had the civil ceremony prior. And I guess we could also talk about the writing of the vows, because that's something that we don't have in our weddings or in our culture, but it's more of a Western thing. Um,
Yeah, what were your feelings about that having been outside of your norm?
so I had a hard time writing the bulk of it. I think I wrote the bulk of it closer to the wedding. But again, I think that more probably has to do with my ADHD also.
Yeah.
I put off things to the last minute and then finish it off. But I did have it written done, I think maybe at least a couple weeks in advance,
Thank you to our officiant for getting the ball rolling on that one.
or at least a week in advance, and then I rehearsed it a couple times. And yeah, I think I did pretty good.
You did an amazing job.
Yeah. And actually, I'm also comfortable speaking on camera or in front of
Yeah, it just
people.
comes so easily to you.
Yeah, I guess it's
You're so lucky.
one of my gifts,
Yes.
so to speak. And I also started like a podcast a few years back, and I did a lot of solo episodes, so I had some practice.
Mhm.
Um, but you also did really, really well. How was the process of writing the vows for you?
Writing them was fine. I spent probably, and like not true to character for me. I'm tend to be a last minute kind of person, but um writing it was fine. I revised it many, many times to get it where I wanted it. But as same thing with the dancing, like public speaking, I don't remember much. It's like when you present in school, I just like blacked out and somehow did it, but I don't remember reading much of them to you. I remember you reading yours out and they were like outstandingly beautiful. I was like trying not to cry the whole time. Oh, and there was a bee in my dress.
Oh
I
yeah,
forgot about that.
yeah. There was a bee in her dress while I was reading the
I
vows.
could see everyone in the
Yeah.
front row freaking out, and the bridesmaids, I could like hear them kind of like moving around behind me. I'm like, what is happening? And then we got through the ceremony, and then someone's like, "There's a bee in your dress." So then
Yeah,
we got it out,
but
and
it
I
was
did
in
get stung.
between the layers, so it
Yeah,
wasn't
of
really
like the
on
skirt.
your. Um, but yeah, our girls were there for the vows, and
We did a candle lighting ceremony, so it's called a unity candle. So you had practiced with the girls ahead of time, so they knew the drill.
yes, I had
Um,
practiced the day before because the girls with me had gone to sleep over at your mom's, which was also the wedding venue.
yeah,
And so I did a practice with the girls because I was making sure that they were comfortable holding a candle that was lit and don't get any wax on them.
they did
So we
very
did,
well.
yeah, they did very well. We did a practice run the day before.
But yeah, anyone with a blended family doing a wedding ceremony, I really like the unity candle. I think that's a really cool way to like incorporate your kids in the ceremony and to like symbolically like m- merge your families in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool too. Um, yeah, I almost cried during my vows while reading them, but held it together. So it was good. And yeah, I remember being nervous before walking down the aisle, and your dad was there, and um, he's like, "Are you nervous?" I was like, "Yeah," and then he handed me like a half lit or his lit cigarette. I took a couple of puffs. I
Sounds
don't
about
really
right.
smoke, but it helped
Yeah,
and
calms the nerves.
calms the nerves. So yeah, that was good overall. I think even the process of writing the vows is very good. It helps you explore why you're getting married and really articulate in your mind what all that looks like.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a good process, and um, yeah, you just have to sit down and really think. And I think it's a good practice to do, and it was great. Um, um, Fitted well with the ceremony. And yeah, you have anything else to add regarding the wedding?
No. I think
That's it.
covers
So
yeah.
that's our wedding.
It was perfect though. Like honestly, like it was worth the months of like wanting to kill you and then
Yeah,
wanting to cry
no,
simultaneously.
I'm still here.
He's still here. He's good. We're good.
Yeah,
But it was honestly like a perfect day. If I could go and relive it, I would.
yes, me too. And yeah, I think that's it. So for the next episode, we'll talk about meeting your parents for the first time and you meeting my parents for the first time, and then we having a separate nikah ceremony, which is another sort of like I guess more Muslim wedding ceremony, and how that sort of worked out. So we'll talk about that in the next one.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. High five.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
All I can think about the whole time is who cares what we have to say.
It's imposter syndrome. Okay.
Gross. Okay.
Yep, there's a pillow on the floor. Did we do anything on the weekend? I don't think so.
Why can I never remember what we do on the weekend?
I don't know. Why can't we remember what we do on the weekend?
Um,
Try to look into the lens when you're talking so people know that you're talking to them, and then you can look here every now and then. You're just
Okay.
looking over there.
that was good times.
I don't know. Do we need to?
What's life with kids? I mean,
Right, yes,
we're raw and unfiltered over here.
She had